Let's go!
I got better. Does a wood sink in water?
No, it floats. It floats.
Right, remove the supports.
Pseudoscience is dangerous. Evil lies so treacherous. Remove the mask, it's obvious that pseudoscience is bad for us. Astrology is not real, Bigfoot's fake. Your blood isn't blue when you don't blow up in space. Megalodon's not around, no mermaids. You believe in those things, but not climate change? Pseudoscience played you for money. When it comes to weight loss, we act like dummies. Hyped up products that never worked. Pseudoscience is a jerk. Pseudoscience spread phony information. Autism linked to certain vaccinations. Parents scared said no to needles. Hundreds of people now infected with the measles. Consequences of denying science, but pseudoscience will deny it. When evidence is fishy, don't believe. It may be pseudoscience out to deceive. Protect your loved ones, protect your money. Pseudoscience wants to get everybody. Arm yourselves with knowledge in that science, then use that science as your guidance.
Hello, everyone, and how are you all doing today? I hope that you are all doing very, very, very well. So yes, today I would like to have a very big discussion about pseudoscience. We are going to be talking about everything from Richard Feynman, whose name I can never fucking say properly, to Michael Gordin. We're going to be talking about Karl Popper today. We're going to be talking about the different categories of pseudoscience and what makes pseudoscience pseudoscience. Because I cover a lot of it on my channel, and I think it's very interesting to discuss and look into. And so I do research this. I'm kind of boring. I admit it. In my spare time, what am I doing? I'm reading about stuff like this. So that is what I would like to do with everyone today, live, if you will, because researching live is more fun than doing it by myself. So without further ado, oh crap. There, that's better. That's better. I would like to talk about how we identify pseudoscience. What is pseudoscience exactly? Again, go through everything and just kind of have some fun. I have found a lot of articles here that are pretty funny and that they, go into them in a very easy way to understand. So, Richard's method for understanding science could also be used for detecting pseudoscience. And because of that, I want to talk about this all here. I just feel like these are the best articles to use. Joe says, she cast a spell and I lost 6 inches. Well, Joe, how many inches did you have if 6 inches was allowed to be lost? Okay. So it says in late 2015, a study made headlines worldwide by bluntly demonstrating the human capacity to be misled by pseudo-profound bullshit from the likes of Deepak Chopra, who is infamous for making profound sounding yet entirely meaningless statements by abusing scientific language. And who is Deepak Chopra? Well, I'll tell you right now, he is not at all the guy that was the executive officer of Canada Post. That's not who we are talking about. Instead, we are talking about this one. So this here is actually Deepak Chopra, and a lot of people are very familiar with him, especially if you are someone that is interested in science and pseudoscience at all. He is one of the main jerk-offs, I guess, who is an alternative medicine advocate. So a lot of people, even in the anti-MLM realm, are very, very familiar with who this guy is because of, all the books and videos that he have made to talk about alternative medicine. That's kind of his whole thing. He was born October 22nd of 1946. He's an Indian American author, and then it says alternative medicine advocate. So he is a very big prominent figure in the New Age movement, which is something that I would say I speak out against on my channel here. I am not a big fan of the New Age movement. His books and videos have made him one of the best known and wealthiest figures in that whole area. He is basically like the king of alternative medicine, if you will. He's done discussions of quantum healing, and they've been characterized as technobabble, if you will. So incoherent babbling strewn with scientific terms, which drives those who actually understand physics crazy. And they are all incorrect. He studied medicine in India before immigrating in 1970 to the US, where he completed a residency in internal medicine and a fellowship in endocrinology. So then he was a licensed physician, yay for all of us. And in 1980, he became chief of staff at the New England Memorial Hospital. In 1985, he became involved in the transcendental meditation movement. And that is programs and organizations that promote meditation techniques founded by this gentleman here, whose name I cannot say, in India in the 1950s. So it's a big thing to those that practice meditation. Most are familiar with that. Shortly thereafter, he resigned his position and established the Maharishi Ayurveda Health Center. And again, that is just his health center that's basically dedicated to the guy that created this. This dude, He was even on the Oprah Winfrey Show in 1993. And he became the executive director of Sharp Healthcare Center for Mind-Body Medicine. In 1996, he co-founded the Chopra Center for Well-Being. And this is kind of when he became a really big issue to all of those. I had to watch a couple of his videos when doing outpatient therapy 12 plus years ago. I believe all of that. I really do. That's the thing, is several years ago, they were still looked at like they were teaching some medicine. So he claims that a person may attain perfect health as a condition that is free from disease, that never feels pain, and that cannot age or die. He strongly believes that. Like, he thinks that you can just become immortal. It's actually really funny to read through some of his beliefs. I highly recommend it if you ever just want to laugh. We're probably going to end up covering him in a couple weeks, and we'll go through a whole bunch. They're pretty funny. I just want to do a quick little synopsis of who he is so that you understand as we read through the next article. So he's all about like, oh, you don't have to age, you don't have to die, you don't have to feel pain, you can never be diseased, you can get perfect health. And he sees the body as a quantum mechanical body composed not of matter, but energy and information, which may sound familiar. This is kind of where that whole medbed thing comes from, by the way. It's this whole idea that your energy can like heal you, if you will, right? He believes that human aging is fluid and changeable. It can speed up, slow down, stop for a time, and even reverse itself, as determined by one's state of mind. And he claims that his practices can also treat chronic disease. He is somebody that is, again, considered to be very pseudoscientific. There is no real, like, there's no real science behind any of this. In fact, any biology goes against a lot of what he believes in. And he is kind of the one that created quantum healing. And again, there's a lot of like illegal medical claims that he does where he says it'll cure cancer, right? It will literally cure anything according to him. So that's who they are talking about when they say that because of him and all of his belief system, it's kind of come back into our world. So we went through a period where we were like, yo, listen, pseudoscience is not cool. And then lately, we've kind of brought it back, like this whole new age thing, right? And that's kind of why I started speaking about it out here, because I realized when I was covering MLMs, and especially when I was covering the health and wellness MLMs, right, that it was really hard for me to combat even just their pseudoscientific beliefs with their health and wellness product, because of the fact that there is such a large new age movement out here right now that very much strongly believes in similar healing methods. And this is someone that really added to that movement. Deepak Chopra is kind of like I said, the king of pseudoscience, if you will, especially if it comes to the health and wellness. A lot of the MLMs and stuff that you're seeing right now in the New Age movement, it is inspired, minimally inspired by him. Um, like at the very least inspired by him, probably a whole bunch of other jerk offs as well. But I decided that since I couldn't just combat it with MLMs, I was like, we have to actually talk about it. And I'm going to have to start speaking out against pseudoscience and the whole New Age movement. Because until we solve that problem in society, where people do kind of wake up to the fact that a lot of the New Age movement and a lot of these like energy healings and med beds, like you're seeing companies come up with, um, a lot of that, it comes from old ass belief systems that we had before we had science. And it's almost like our society has regressed back into pseudoscience. And we all need to stop doing that, right? And then people will be more open to talking about how MLM and their pseudosciences all suck. Hello, Auntie. I am so glad that you are here. This guy can cure VD. Well, do you know what? He actually says that he can cure all about that stuff. Really. He literally has said he could cure any ailment with this. The whole like quantum energy thing is it's ridiculous. We should do a deep dive just on that. His relationship advice turns you asexual, probably. Hello, I am so glad to see you, Mama Chan. I hope I said that right. Zach's thinking about starting an MLM for incels. What do you think? It could definitely work out. Tell him he just needs Mr. Medicare or Ethan Ralph to join and be one of the promoters. And then all of the incels will just appear. He won't even have to recruit. They'll all just come running. So again, it's almost like in 2015, this study was like, listen, all of this pseudoscience is coming back. Deepak Chopra is running his shit. We need to go and look into all of this and how people can be so misled by this. So then it continues on to say that this is all well and good, but how are we supposed to know that we are being misled when we read a quote about quantum theory from someone like Chopra if we don't know the first thing about quantum mechanics? And that's kind of part of the issue here, right? So it says, in a lecture given by Richard Feynman in 1966, the influential theoretical physicist told a story about the difference between knowing the name for something and truly understanding it. Now, again, in case you are not aware with who that is, Richard here is actually a Nobel Prize winner. He has done a lot. So I found this great little synopsis on who he is. And again, it is on the Nobel Prize site. And again, I will leave the links to all of this when I am done in the description below. So, he was born in New York City on the 11th of May in 1918. He studied at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he got his Bachelor's of Science in 1939, and at Princeton University, where he obtained his PhD in 1942. He was then the research assistant at Princeton from 1940 to 1941, professor of theoretical physics at Cornell University, 1945 to 1950, visiting professor and thereafter appointed professor of theoretical physics at the California Institute of Technology from 1950 till 1959. And it says, at present, he is Richard Chase Tolman Professor of Theoretical Physics at the California Institute of Technology. Professor Feynman is a member of the American Physical Society, the American Association for the Advancement of Science, the National Academy of Science, and in 1965 he was elected a foreign member of the Royal Society, London in Great Britain. He holds the following awards: Albert Einstein Award, which he got in 1954 in Princeton, the Einstein Award, which again he got Albert Einstein Award, College of Medicine, Lawrence Award in 1962. Richard Feynman is married to Gwyneth Howarth. They have a son, awesome, and a daughter, awesome. So, unfortunately, he died February 15th of 1988. They did a little update here when he passed away. Of course, this information is a little bit old, but he did get the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1965. And again, hard thing to get. So he is someone that, is very, very into science, somebody you want to listen to here. And I think that we should literally take what he says here as gospel. I should start a business called Build a Cult. It's a little like Build a Bear, but without the plush. Fine men. Yeah, I can never say it. I don't know why. My friggin' my mind just wants to say it wrong. It really does every time. We know I have speech issues here. So if you're here, half of the fun is coming here to listen to me be intelligent but unable to speaketh. So he gave this lecture in 1966, and this is what he said. And I think that this is very interesting. And I know some people out here are going to be like, well, this is old information. It was in 1966, but it's still relevant right now. Okay? So this is his speech in which he says, this boy said to me, see that bird standing on the stump there? What's the name of it? I said, I haven't got the slightest idea. He said, it's a brown-throated thrush. Your father doesn't teach you much about science. I smiled to myself because my father had already taught me that the name doesn't tell me anything about the bird. He taught me, see that bird? It's a brown-throated thrush. But in Germany, it's called a Hausenflügel. And in Chinese, they call it a chungling. And even if you know all those names for it, you still know nothing about the bird. You only know something about people. what they call that bird. Now that thrush sings and teaches its young to fly, and it flies so many miles away during the summer across the country, and nobody knows how it finds its way, and so forth. There is a difference between the name of the thing and what goes on. The result of this is that I cannot remember anybody's name, and when people discuss physics with me, they often are exasperated when they say, the Fitz-Cronin effect, and I ask, what is the effect? And I can't remember the name. Feynman went on, there is a first grade science book which, in the first lesson of the first grade, begins in an unfortunate manner to teach science because it starts off on the wrong idea of what science is. There is a picture of a dog, a windable toy dog, and a hand comes to the winder, and then the dog is able to move. Under the last picture, it says, what makes it move? Later on, there is a picture of a real dog and the question, what makes it move? Then there is a picture of a motorbike and the question, what makes it move? And so on. I thought at first they were getting ready to tell us what science was going to be about. Physics, biology, chemistry, but that wasn't it. The answer was in the teacher's edition of the book. The answer I was trying to learn is that energy makes it move. Now, energy is a very subtle concept. It is very, very difficult to get right. What I meant is that it is not easy to understand energy well enough to use it right so that you can deduce something correctly using the energy idea. It is beyond the first grade. It would be equally well to say that God makes it move, or spirit makes it move, or movability makes it move. In fact, one could equally well say energy makes it stop. Look at it this way. That's only the definition of energy. It should be reversed. We might say, when something can move, that it has energy in it, but not what makes it move is energy. This is a very subtle difference. It's the same with this inertia proposition. Perhaps I could make the difference a little clearer this way. If you ask a child what makes the toy dog move, you should think about what an ordinary human being would answer. The answer is that you wound up the spring. It tries to unwind and pushes the gear around. What a good way to begin a science course. Take apart the toy, see how it works, see the cleverness of the gears, see the ratchets, learn something about the toy, the way the toy is put together, the ingenuity of people devising the ratchets and other things. That's good. The question is fine. The answer is a little unfortunate because what they were trying to do is teach a definition of what is energy, but nothing whatever is learned. Suppose a student would say, I don't think energy makes it move. Where does the discussion go from there? I finally figured out a way to test whether you have taught an idea or you have only taught a definition. Test it this way. You say, without using the new word which you have just learned, try to rephrase what you have just learned in your own language. Without using the word energy, tell me what you know now about the dog's motion. You cannot. So you learn nothing about science. That may be all right. You may not want to learn something about science right away. You have to learn definitions. But for the very first lesson, is that not possibly destructive? I think for lesson number 1, to learn a mystic formula for answering questions is very bad. The book has some others. Gravity makes it fall. The soles of your shoes wear out because of friction. Shoe leather wears out because it rubs against the sidewalk. And the little notches and bumps on the sidewalk grab pieces and pull them off. To simply say it is because of friction is sad, because it's not science. Feynman's parable about the meaning of science is a valuable way of testing ourselves on whether we have really learned something or whether we just think we have learned something, but it is equally useful for testing the claims of others. If someone cannot explain something in plain English, then we should question whether they really do themselves understand what they profess. If the person in question is communicating ostensibly to a non specialist audience using specialist terms out of context, the first question on our lips should be why. In the words of Feynman, it is possible to follow form and call it science, but that is pseudoscience. And I thought that that was very, very interesting, especially when you think about how a lot of times people will use these large terms in order to trick you. It's kind of like when you're watching Ash Mufara talk about On Passive, and he's using all the big techie terms and marketing terms that the layman wouldn't understand. And that's why whenever I talk about this sort of thing or people giving instructions and whatnot, I kind of say they have to be given in a way that a layman would understand, in a way that the everyday person would understand. So one should not have to be a tech genius in order to understand the tech behind On Passive. And it sort of goes over here, same sort of thing. You need to fully understand what science and what pseudoscience is, and that's kind of what we're trying to work out here today. So Deepak is going to be all surprised when he gets old and dies. Do you know what? He really will be. I kind of look forward. I'm not lying. I mean, he's already aged. Let's be real. I mean, he doesn't look young. So I wonder what he has to say about that. Hello, Ken McDonald. How are you? I hope that you are doing very well. I'm putting you on my screen because apparently I am supposed to be stalking your every move, and I am supposed to have researched every single subscriber I have and know every single thing they are doing 24/7 because apparently you're a very, very, very naughty person and I should not have you here. But I just know you as a commenter and you've never been mean to me, so I'm not really sure what any of that is about. But I hope that you're having a fabulous day. Give this a right. Do you know what? I really hope Cece does watch this. I doubt he will. But we know he knows I exist. I'm glad you're doing well. So, I just found that really interesting because it's a good point, right? It's a good point, especially like I said, when you're listening to people spread the pseudoscience. So again, think of like an MLM Hunbot and she's trying to shell out some anti-aging cream, right? If she can't explain the ingredients and she can't explain how it works and all of that kind of stuff, should she then be shilling a product? That's a question you want to know. The trolls want me spied on too. It's all good. So I just found it interesting. I was like, I think we should talk about that. So I'm wondering what you guys think. Do let me know what you think about that whole thing. Because, it is one thing to know the definition of something without fully understanding it, which I do feel like Deepak there might be doing. The trolls just wish I wasn't born. So interesting. He is a legend. So now I found another article that talks about the 4 categories of pseudoscience and how to talk to people who believe in them. Because I think, again, that it breaks it down for us a little bit, and we're trying to kind of learn how to define all of this and what exactly is pseudoscience. There are a lot of people out here that believe that pseudoscience is just science that hasn't been scientifically proven yet, if you will. And I think that that's part of the problem in terms of the understanding of it. Like, for example, people that believe in ghosts, which I believe to be a pseudoscience and not real, because I'm also atheist. So if I want to believe in ghosts, I also have to then like have some kind of religious or spiritual belief system, right? Excuse me. And I just don't have that. So for me, it's like ghosts are just not real. My husband, however, does believe in ghosts. He's a little bit more spiritual than I am. And he does believe in ghosts. He thinks that ghosts is a complete possibility. And so his argument to me often is that we just haven't found definitive proof in science to prove that there are ghosts. But that doesn't mean that they don't exist. And I'm like, that's a fair sort of point. And I want to ask you guys what you think about that. Do you think that in many cases, these pseudosciences that we're studying could equate to science one day if we find the proper scientific evidence for it? Because, I mean, if they ever do find scientific evidence that for sure ghosts are real, and they can prove this to me with full on science, right? They get right into metaphysics and everything showing me it, and they present that to me, I might have to rethink my whole belief system, you know? Right? So I'm just wondering, we got to kind of figure this out. What does constitute as actual pseudoscience? Is pseudoscience just the shit that we know for sure cannot be real? Like, you know, Mr. Deepak over here that says that he could reverse aging and live forever, which we know cannot happen. Scientifically, we cannot do that. We may be able to slow down aging with some really great skincare products or cosmetic surgery, for example, but there isn't something that will reverse our aging or something that will keep us alive forever, turn us immortal. And I don't think I would want to be alive forever. I'm just throwing that out there. I don't think that's as fun as it sounds. So, that's kind of what we're here deciding today. What is it? And this person claims that pseudoscience is science's shadow. And that really got me interested. I was like, what does that mean? Trying to define pseudoscience is difficult. There is no one thing that makes something pseudo. And I was like, huh, okay, yeah, like that is true. Right? We all get crusty and die. I'm already almost there. The problem with believing in ghosts is that I am asked to disprove an invisible negative. See, and that's what I mean as well. Is that I can't prove that they are not real 100%, even with science. Right? Like that's sort of the thing with ghosts. Is that one is still kind of up in the air a bit. And again, that also relates to, is there an afterlife? As we know, in order for ghosts to be real, there would have to be some form of an afterlife. So a lot of people that are religious or spiritual and do believe in that tend to believe in ghosts. And again, it could be up in the air. I can prove they don't exist because they're camera shy and invisible, right? And that's the thing, is that you can't prove a negative, right? And that's why some of this seems to be up in the air, because there isn't enough definitive proof. That's the main thing you have to go by, right? There is no definitive proof that says ghosts not real at all. Nothing. Not, and it's kind of the same with the afterlife. I mean, even if you go by people that have quote unquote like died and seen it, like we've talked about the near death experience, NDEs, right? I have a whole stream on that where we sort of talk about how even that doesn't really prove that it's real. So again, we don't have proof that it is real, but then we don't have enough proof to say that it isn't. So it's one of those things that is just kind of chalked up to being pseudoscience. But again, it is sort of one of the things that, like I said, if evidence ever does get produced in the future that says these things are real, here is the scientific proof, then a lot of us are going to have to kind of take the scientific proof and go, oh, crap. Now I got to rethink my whole being, you know? It's the same thing as UFOs. There isn't any hard evidence. Yes, and aliens and whatnot, right? You could do bias confirmation research for all of this stuff. And that's another thing you have to be careful of doing as well that I try really hard not to do, which again can be hard because I am atheist. So I really badly want to sit here and I want to say there is no such thing as ghosts no matter what, because there's no such thing as a fucking afterlife. But even in my atheist self, you know, I have to admit, and everyone, if they're actually ethical and have any integrity, would have to admit that if science proves something to be real, and we all believe so heavily in science, that we would then kind of have to believe it, wouldn't we? You know, like it is what it is. So they actually have a historian of science, Dr. Michael Gordin, who suggests that pseudoscience is science's shadow. People invested in pseudoscience often think they are doing real science, and approaching them with that understanding can make speaking to them much easier. So I don't know, maybe it'll also be much easier. Now, I wasn't personally familiar with Michael Dan Gordon. Okay, I'm not like queen of pseudoscience. I talk a lot about pseudosciences. I love to learn about them. I like to learn with you guys. I like to teach you what I learn. But I'm not like over. I don't know every single person involved. So I did have to look this person up. So we'll look them up together now. And Michael Dan Gordon, which is, I guess, what the D stands for, he was born November 3rd, 1974, and he is an American science historian and Slavist. And that is the academic field of area studies concerned with Slavic areas, languages, literature, history, and culture, in case you weren't aware. Born in New Jersey, he studied at Harvard University and got a bachelor's degree in 1996 and a doctorate in 2001. From 2003, he was at Princeton University, where he is now a professor. He has done research on the early development of the natural sciences in Russia in the 18th century, biology warfare in the Soviet Union, the relationship of Russian literature to the natural sciences, this word that I am not going to pronounce, and pseudosciences. The early history of the atomic bombs and the Cold War, which that's pretty important work. Albert Einstein in Prague, History of Global Scientific Languages, which again, that I feel like that's also important work, but if you know me, you know I'm kind of into the language thing too. So yeah. And the life of Dmitry Mendeleev and the history of the periodic table, which again, the periodic table, very, very important in chemistry. And I feel like we do need to know the history of these things and how they came to be if we want to fully understand and use them, right? And then in 2019, he became a member of the German Academy of Sciences in Leopoldina. Sorry, I probably also said that wrong. And he has actually published like a whole bunch of art, like literature. So this is actually PubMed.gov, which is the National Library of Medicine. Yes, I do have a subscription to this. Yes, I am that much of a nerd where I read through things like this all the time. Okay, half of my life is just sitting here reading medical papers and studies and all that fun stuff. So as you see, he's done a lot, a lot. This is only the first page, by the way. There's several. He's done a lot of publications in the National Library of Medicine, which I find very, very helpful whenever I am researching something, especially like I said, in the health and wellness area, I usually go there to go, what does this area over here say? Is there anything over here about this at all that I can use? And there's usually a few different papers that I'll read up on talking about things. So we want to listen to Dr. Michael Gordin. He knows his shit. And he says that pseudoscience is science's shadow, which again, I find that really interesting. People invested in pseudoscience often think they are doing real science. And this is why I said, do you guys think that a lot of pseudoscience maybe is just real science that we haven't totally proved yet? And we need to learn how to speak to people. All right? That's what I'm out here trying to do. So I think it would benefit all of us if we learned. Goddamn science! You can prove a negative, you just can't disprove what. I don't know. I feel like it's also hard to prove a negative at times. But anyway, despite increasing levels of technology and scientific literacy, it seems as if pseudoscience is more insane and pervasive than ever. Why, damn it? And this is what I'm trying to find out too. Why? If these ideas are so clearly mistaken, why is it that so many people get sucked into them? Why do some pseudosciences like flat earth theory, yes, CC, why? Even have conventions where people do what they think is science? That's a really good question. I would like to know why there's a whole bunch of flat earth conventions still going on. It would be nice. In an essay on pseudoscience, historian of science Dr. Michael Gordin argues that we often think about the divide between real science and pseudoscience incorrectly. By looking at pseudoscience and how they relate to real science, we can get a better understanding of what they are and how to deal with them, which is a really good idea. Now, again, I just want to show you guys, because I get accused of not doing proper research with my videos here, that I have actually read this. It was published in 2017. So it's still pretty relevant. There's also some science that has been proven that the government has hidden. And that's the thing, is that a real thing? So I have actually read through this, and I will leave a link to it down below. But it does go into Karl Popper's doctrine of falsifiability, which again, we're going to go into a little bit today. And it goes into the classification of fringe sciences. And I was going to sit here and go through all of this with you, but it's kind of dry for a live stream, I won't lie. And to tell you the truth, the article that I'm about to read does a better job of breaking it down. So instead, what I am going to do is I will leave you a link. Again, I hope that you can see it. I'll put it in the chat even right now. You should be able to get to it even if you do not have an actual subscription to the med. So I'll put that in the chat for you guys. It seems like the flat earth movement is growing. I would love to know why. Did people become more paranoid about science during the pandemic? Yes. A lot of people did. A lot of people also stopped believing in the government and in the medical field to help at that time. And I've talked about it a lot on my channel about why we keep going into pseudoscience. This is kind of another stream of that, is how did we get here? How did we regress back to pseudoscience? And it seems like the flat earth movement doesn't ever really die. It just kind of goes quieter for a while. And then they jump back out. And then they go quieter. It's still all the same people that are running it as back in, I believe it was around 2016 that everyone out here was covering them in full force often. Running a car on water. Yeah, things like that. In search of the elusive deep state. Well, I never believed in the government. Smart person. Most of us should probably not believe in the government. And again, Even here in Canada, we have had problems with trusting Justin Trudeau and how everything here was handled in terms of the pandemic and then in terms of the truck convoy. Hopefully I'm going to finish editing a video about all that and putting it out soon. Because I recorded it. I just haven't had time to edit. Do I have a rabbit hole for Queen when she gets bored? I hope so, Six Drops. Definitely send it to me. So I have read it all, and I was like, we're going to sit down. We're going to go through it. And I started to read through it like for the second time, thinking, will it go out with the stream if I do this? And I was like, this is boring as hell. So then I found this, and it is, again, the bigthink.com website, but it just breaks down that whole thing in a beautiful way. And so let's go through it now. So what defines science anyway? Which is really the big question. I mean, if you're asking yourself, what is pseudoscience? You kind of have to also define what science is, right? We can't just be defining one without the other. So the question of what defines a claim as scientific is known to philosophy as the demarcation problem. While many great minds have attempted to draw a clear line between the scientific and the unscientific, the results of their efforts have been mixed. And I feel like that's kind of part of the issue too, is that even in the scientific world, all right, we can never really figure out exactly what it is, right? Yeah, Bill C-16. I think it had to do with all the conspiracy theories rolling into one, and I believe this happened because people spent too much time on Reddit and 4chan. Do you know what? Yes. Yes. A lot of it comes from Reddit and 4chan. I mean, it does. The time cube. You need to get high when you research it. I'll try. So the most commonly cited demarcation line is Karl Popper's idea of falsifiability. According to Popper, for a hypothesis to be scientific, it must be falsifiable. An idea like Einstein's theory of relativity makes clear predictions that can be tested, such as whether the sun bends light passing near it. And this is why I say we can't disprove or prove like ghosts are real, because we also don't have a way to test that. And this, again, with a lot of this stuff, that seems to be the problem. So that makes it scientific. On the other hand, Popper suggested that some theories, like the Marxist theory of history or Freudian psychoanalysis, were unfalsifiable and therefore unscientific. While this line is the most commonly used, it has problems. An idea might be falsifiable, but sometimes it is difficult to tell which idea an experiment falsifies. At the same time, the idea that Bigfoot exists is technically falsifiable, but few would consider searching for Sasquatch to be a worthwhile scientific endeavor unless you are watching those shows. There was just a whole show, okay, dedicated to finding the Sasquatch. And I was like, are we really doing this in 2020? I believe that's when it started, 2020, 2021. It came out. It was all like finding Sasquatch or some bullshit, finding Bigfoot. And I was like, really? We doing this out here right now? Like, okay. You know, I am not the only one to think this either. Way more intelligent people agree with it. It's true. It is true. It has a lot to do with conspiracy theories. It has a lot to do with QAnon. I actually kind of did a deep dive on that a little bit. How everything weirdly connects, you know? And it's very strange. So, another concept previously quite popular and still referenced in some circles is that of the paradigm shift as described by Thomas Kahn. Kahn puts the line between science and non-science in terms of paradigms, bundles of ideas that are widely accepted among scientists. Again, I feel like there's a little bit of an issue with this as well because of bias, but we're getting into that, I'm sure. Ideas that align with paradigms can be considered science, while those that do not are considered something else, so therefore probably pseudoscience. Revolutions in science occur when problems with the dominant paradigm became too large to ignore, and a new one comes to prominence. He also noted that people in certain pseudosciences, like astrology or medieval medicine, weren't actually doing research and therefore weren't practicing science at all. And this is kind of why I do speak out a lot about the health and wellness area, is because I do find that a lot of that is based on some medieval medicine, or at least medicine that we haven't had to use in a very, very long ass time. And it's people where one person does a little bit of history research, right? And they find out that some herb somewhere, probably from China, cured something one time. And apparently, by the way, it's not proven. And then they make a whole line of products with this. And then they have a whole bunch of Huns out here selling it all over the place, talking about things they don't know. And then we find out that none of them actually were tested to be proven if they worked. They just decided they worked because of this one person said so, because he heard about this Chinese herb and it worked for one person one time way back 30 years ago. And that's kind of part of the problem, is that you got to do your own research. I believe that Sasquatch is an alien experiment. Oh, that would be an interesting thing to talk about. You should elaborate on that. Like a dog chasing a car, what will they actually do if they catch one? I've wondered that. Like, what are we doing with it? Are we gonna put it in like some museum somewhere? Are we gonna chop up the Sasquatch and like figure out what it is? Right? Because that's technically what we'd be doing with the Sasquatch or aliens if we found them. We'd be studying them. Like, I don't know if you want them to be found, if you believe in them. Protect them. Hashtag protect the aliens. Hello, Takara. I hope that you are doing very, very well. Right? I mean, but that's what I mean. I'm kind of like, what are we doing with them? Listen, Joe, you be nice. You be nice to your wife. I hope you did not just call your wife Bigfoot on here. I will slap her. I'll slap her. I'm not gonna slap her. I'll slap you for her. That's what I was trying to say. Poor woman just gets beaten up today. So I find this very interesting. I hope you guys are finding it as equally interesting as I am. The idea of paradigms as the demarcation lines can explain some aspects of science, but it doesn't entirely explain how shifts to new ideas occur. Importantly, while it can identify what pseudoscience is, it tends to the relativistic. What is inside or outside the paradigm can be determined by irrelevant factors. Dr. Gordin suggests that the problem with these ideas and others like them is their reliance on one demarcation line, as he puts it. Any attempt to build a taxonomy of the many doctrines that have been labeled as pseudoscientific reveals the impossibility of an internally consistent single definition of fringe science. And he actually goes into quite a lot about what fringe science is, which I'm sure we're getting into. Instead, he suggests that pseudoscience is science's shadow. Specifically, it is the shadow of professional science. And just as a shadow cannot exist without the object casting it, so does every object necessarily cast shadows. These shadows, and there is more than one, can be treated as overlapping, but with certain tendencies that allow us to categorize them. The multiple science or shadows of science. Dr. Gordin warns these groups are not all inclusive, but they do cover many pseudoscientific topics. Each is motivated by different factors, has different sorts of ideas inside of it, and has to be dealt with in different ways. First, he identifies the vestigial sciences. He describes these as systems of thought that used to be considered sciences, but that professional scientists have over time either gradually moved away from or actively excluded. The most well known are astrology and alchemy, which during the Renaissance were largely synonymous with what would become by the end of the Enlightenment astronomy and chemistry. Many of these were once considered true sciences, and some even continue to have large numbers of supporters carrying out work that looks a fair bit like real science. Look at astrology, for example, right? Sasquatch bones have never been found, so I believe that the aliens collect them before humans can buy them. She calls herself that. Her pubs are deadly weapons. Good. Next, he identifies the ideological fringes. And see, now this is interesting because, again, they're saying here that astrology and alchemy, right, are things that were seen as science at one point, but now they've been excluded as science. So again, can the opposite occur, right? Can you then, what if these were not seen as science ever, and then all of a sudden they were proven? Like, I'm just saying, like, it could work both ways. Next, he identifies the ideological fringes. These are the ideas that are distortions of rational thinking in the service of a political ideology, right? Famous examples include Nazi, Dutch, Physik, Stalinist, I'm not going to say this word right, but it's this word, and the increasingly tortured arguments against climate science we see today. Like the climate change. After that is the mentalist fringe, defined as focusing on allegedly unrecognized or underappreciated powers of mind. Right? And this group includes a wide range of pseudoscience from ESP to spiritualism. Importantly, this group overlaps with the vestigial group, as many ideas here were once considered scientific before better ideas came along. And that's what I'm saying. A lot of it has always been pseudoscience and then gets moved into pseudoscience. Pseudoscience sees as pseudoscience, and then once it's proven, it can be seen as science. Lastly, Dr. Gordin defines the controversy fringe, which is probably all of your favorite, categorized by cases in which potentially path-breaking work is published within the bounds of a science and is greeted with intense skepticism and debate, typically aired across the pages of professional journals. Items in this group can either become accepted, as was the case for quantum mechanics a century ago, or rejected and sent back to the fringe, as is the case for anybody who claims cold fusion has been invented yet. So, according to this conception, something like astrology fits neatly into one category, while something like dialectic materialism, which is the Marxist theory of history, could fit within two, vestigial and ideological, something like the search for Atlantis, the existence of which is falsifiable hypothesis, would likely rest in the controversy group. And again, that's where Sasquatch would rest. Right? Because you could technically go and find the Sasquatch, but are we going to be putting a whole bunch of money and time and scientists' work into that? Is it worth it? Because most people are just like, no, it's not real. But if a bunch of you guys down in the South want to get together and go create a show to find it, then we'll help you do that, right? So now we get into how do we deal with pseudoscience if we can't easily pinpoint what it is? Damn it. One of the biggest takeaways of this is that pseudoscience isn't one thing. It will change over time. Yay, I'm ahead! Look at me go. As such, we will never be rid of it. Anything with a center has a fringe, and science is no different. So again, New Age medicine would just be considered a form of pseudoscience, right? The New Age movement. Dr. Gordin suggests that in certain ways, each category is critiquing mainstream science. Addressing those critiques can go a long way in keeping the lid on ideas that would otherwise spread far and wide. In some cases, we fucking need that, okay? We do. For example, looking at a few of the points that pseudosciences seem to consistently raise, including that real science tends toward abstruse jargon, excessive mathematization, and an impression that science is cliquish and resists engagement with outsiders, which I don't think that's true, but anyway, and taking a moment to address them may help some people on the fringes find their way back to the center. Come back to the center with us. Dr. Gordon points out that many people know about the work of science, but not how it is done. And again, if we're going to be out here talking about that, we do have to understand. We really do. I enjoy the controversial stuff. Most people do. Let's be real. Demystifying those aspects of science that are stamps of its being professional rather than reiterating oversimplified versions of revisable knowledge claims would at the very least educate neutral parties more about the daily practices of science and provide a point of collaboration between the sciences and those social scientists, anthropologists, historians, and sociologists who have made great strides in elucidating precisely these features of scientists' work. Few people think they are conducting or subscribing to pseudoscience, Dr. Gordon argues. And that's one of the things. Obviously, people that believe in this stuff, they don't consider them as pseudoscience, right? That's their belief. If you believe in astrology and then I say to you that's a pseudoscience, you believe that that is real science. You know, same with the ghost, same with anything else. It is a significant point for reflection that all individuals who have been called pseudoscientists have considered themselves to be scientists with no prefix. And this is actually the quote that got me to want to talk about this when I was reading through the actual report before I found this, where I was like, wow, that's quite a statement. It is a significant point for reflection that all individuals who have been called pseudoscientists have considered themselves to be scientists with no prefix. You know? Many fields that seem rather absurd have journals with a form of peer review. It is possible to get certification in alternative medicines that don't do much at all. An entire subculture once existed around the idea that all ancient religions were based on an improbable planetary event between Venus, Earth, and Jupiter. These claims make much more sense when you consider that the people on the fringes of science think they are doing the same thing as those in the center. Addressing the issues that push people away from the center is a reasonable approach if this is correct. You catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Dr. Gordon specifically rejects belittling advocates of pseudosciences, which he accuses our Richard Feynman of having done, in favor of finding ways that the mainstream might better address the issues that drove people to the fringes in the first place. And I mean, again, that's a good point. And I think that's why when I try to cover things, I don't want to be like, you suck if you believe this. Rah, 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 rah. I want it to be kind of an open discussion. Yes, this is a pseudoscience. Yes, I don't believe in it. But even if you do believe in it, I don't want to insult your belief. I just want you to have critical thinking skills. And I want to ensure that you aren't just believing in it because somebody told you to and gave you a little bit of wrong information. I want you to make educated decisions about what you believe in. And I want you to be open to changing your belief system if need be. Like I said at the beginning of this, I am. So again, Richard Feynman apparently belittling people out here, and we're trying to bridge the gap, Richard. Geesh. For example, compare the sentiments behind I have a degree, so trust me, which we know is just not true. I mean, look at Dragnot. And this topic is very complex, so understanding takes at least 4 years of training. Like, you can't cover Shanny unless you've been here for 10 years. When dealing with somebody who has concerns about credentialism as a barrier to science, this latter approach will likely be more effective in helping advocates of pseudoscience to treat mainstream science as trustworthy rather than just a meritless hierarchy. Pseudoscience has been around since the rise of modern science. I mean, yeah, technically, I would actually say that pseudoscience has technically been around since before science. Right? I mean, if we've decided that in a lot of cases pseudoscience could be science that just hasn't been proved yet, beyond a reasonable doubt, for example, then technically every single thing was pseudoscience before it became science, and we had a bunch of pseudoscience before we ever even created the tools to come up with what science is, or study science, or anything to do with science, right? And it's definitely been around since before the rise of modern science, and it is likely to endure in some form. I just hope the New Age movement doesn't continue. While there is no metaphysical notion of pseudoscience, oh my god, that's so hard to say. Pseudoscience-ness. Whew. Say that 500 times fast. That we can point to and weed out of society, Dr. Gordin suggests that we can come to understand what areas nonsense tends to collect in, what draws people to it, and how to talk to them once they develop a taste for it. And again, I would have to agree with that. I think that's a much better way. I really do. I do. So, now that we've read a little bit of that, I need to have a moment's break to go and grab a coffee, have a little drinkies, and then we are going to talk about Karl Popper, and we are also going to talk about a 6-step infographic for ending pseudoscience, because I think we should talk about a little bit of everything today. So what I'm going to do is I am going to play something for you. I am going to play something for you. I promise I have something that you can watch while I go. Oh, and while I am looking for this, by the way, I would like to say that I do need to let you all know that we are going to be going live tonight at 6:10 p.m. Eastern to discuss well, basically to to discuss how On Passive has been taking elderly people that are not well. It is something that actually bothered a lot of you. You sent us this and you were like, oh my God, this is awful. What the hell is this? So I was like, I think we need to react to this one because obviously a lot of people are very upset by it. And I just think that if you guys are going to get that upset over something, that we should definitely look into it. I really do. Obviously, it upset a lot of people. So just be prepared for that tonight because it did upset people. And I don't like people being upset, but I just feel like you know it's important. It's important to talk about this. I cannot find what I was looking for originally. Where did it go? Where did it go? Oh. All right, guys, here. Just watch the Monty Python witch thing again. I'm sorry. I'll be right back.
I got better. Would sink in water.
No, it floats. It floats.
We shall use my larger scales. Right, remove the supports.
A witch! She's a witch! I had the second clip. I had another clip of Monty Python that was in that. And I'm sorry, I must have deleted it when I was cleaning out stuff, when I was downloading Andrew Tate songs the other day. Stay tuned for that. So, yeah, I'm glad that your inner nerd is having fun. That's what I'm here for. That's what I am here for. It enrages me when scammers take advantage of the elderly. Me too. And On Passive is basically a scam that's all they do because they're a tech scam, so they just like to take advantage of the elderly all the fucking time. So we cover them as much as possible over here. And I'm going to be on the Recovering Hunbots channel at 6:10 p.m. Eastern. So, since we are talking about pseudoscience, we do have to talk about Karl Popper because it wouldn't be talking about pseudoscience and science and the line between science and pseudoscience if we didn't talk about Karl Popper and what he thinks about the line between science and pseudoscience. I mean, we've brought it up a bunch, so now let's get into it. So, it's not immediately clear to the layman, and this is why I said people need to explain stuff and describe stuff for the layman, what the essential difference is. Let's not do his whole picture. I mean, he's not the ugliest looking dude, but not really that great looking that I want to see him in full screen there, sir. Just calm down. What the essential difference is between science and something masquerading as science, which we consider to be pseudoscience. And if you click on this right here, it will bring you to, no, this makes me laugh. Cargo cult science, Richard Feynman on believing what isn't true. And it gets into a bunch of his stuff again. So I just thought that was funny. I just had to show you that. You would think it would be the definition of pseudoscience, but it's not. The distinction gets at the core of what comprises human knowledge. How do we actually know something to be true? Is it simply because our powers of observation tell us so? Or is there more to it? Sir Karl Popper, who was born in 1902 and died in 1994, is a scientific philosopher, and he was interested in the same problem. How do we actually define the scientific process? We've talked about this before on the channel, but again, it's come up here, so let's do it again. How do we know which theories can be said to be truly explanatory? He began addressing it in a lecture which is printed in the book Conjectures and Refutations, The Growth of Scientific Knowledge, which is available online, and I highly recommend reading it if you want more information about this. When I received the list of participants in this course and realized that I had been asked to speak to philosophical colleagues, I thought, after some hesitation and consultation, that you would probably prefer me to speak about those problems which interest me most, and about those developments with which I am most intimately acquainted. I therefore decided to do what I have never done before, to give you a report on my own work in the philosophy of science since the autumn of 1919, when I first began to grapple with the problem. When should a theory be ranked as scientific, or is there a criterion for the scientific character or status of a theory? Popper saw a problem with the number of theories he considered non scientific that, on their surface, seem to have a lot in common with good, hard, rigorous science. But the question of how we decide which theories are compatible with the scientific method and those which are not was a lot harder than it seemed to be. It is most common to say that science is done by collecting observations and grinding out theories from them. Charles Darwin once said, after working long and hard on the problem of the origin of species, "My mind seems to have become a kind of machine for grinding general laws out of large collections of facts." This is a popularly accepted notion. We observe, observe, and observe, and we look for theories to best explain the mass of facts. Although even this is not really true. Popper points out that we must start with some a priori knowledge to be able to generate new knowledge. Observation is always done with some hypothesis in mind. We can't understand the world from a totally blank slate. More on that another time. I guess think of a baby trying to understand the world. You got to teach them something first, you know? The problem, as Popper saw it, is that some bodies of knowledge more properly named pseudosciences would be considered scientific if the observe and deduce operating definition were left alone. For example, a believing astrologist can ably provide you with evidence, in quotations of course, that their theories are sound. The biographical information of a great many people can be explained this way, they'd say. The astrologist would tell you, for example, about how Leos seek to be the center of attention, ambitious, strong, seeking the limelight. As proof, they might follow up with a host of real life Leos, world leaders, celebrities, politicians, and so on. In some senses, in some sense, the theory would hold up. The observations could be explained by the theory, which is how science works, right? Mm, Sir Carl ran into this problem in a concrete way because he lived during a time when psychoanalytic theories were all the rage at just the same time Einstein was laying out a new foundation for the physical sciences with the concept of relativity. What made Popper uncomfortable were comparisons between the two. Why did he feel so uneasy putting Marxist theories and Freudian psychology in the same category of knowledge as Einstein's relativity? Did all three not have vast explanatory power in the world? Each theory's proponents certainly believed so, but Popper was not satisfied. It was during the summer of 1919, and again, this is what he's saying now. This is his quote. It was during the summer of 1919 that I began to feel more and more dissatisfied with these three theories: the Marxist theory of history, psychoanalysis, and individual psychology. And I began to feel dubious about their claims to scientific status. My problem perhaps first took the simple form: what is wrong with Marxism, psychoanalysis, and individual psychology? Why are they so different from physical theories, from Newton's theory, and especially from the theory of relativity? I found that those of my friends who were admirers of Marx, Freud, and Adler were impressed by a number of points common to these theories, and especially by their apparent explanatory power. These theories appeared to be able to explain practically everything that happened within the fields to which they referred. The study of any of them seemed to have the effect of an intellectual conversion or revelation, opening your eyes to a new truth hidden from those not yet initiated. Once your eyes were thus opened, you saw confirming instances everywhere. The world was full of verifications of the theory. Whatever happened always confirmed it. Thus, its truth appeared manifest, and unbelievers were clearly people who did not want to see the manifest truth, who refused to see it, either because it was against their class interests or because of their repressions, which were still unanalyzed and crying aloud for treatment. Here was the salient problem. The proponents of these new sciences saw validations and verifications of their theories everywhere. And what do we call that today, ladies and gentlemen? Confirmation bias. Yay! Oh, look, there it is. If you were having trouble as an adult, it could always be explained by something your mother or father had done to you when you were young. If you aren't familiar with Freud, it basically blamed everything on the parents. Some repressed something or other that hadn't been analyzed and solved. They were confirmation bias machines. Now, are you guys familiar with what confirmation bias actually is? I think one day we need to do a whole stream on confirmation bias. It would probably be very, very helpful, to tell you the truth. What was the missing element? Popper had figured it out before long. The non-scientific theories could not be falsified. They were not testable in a legitimate way. There was no possible objection that could be raised which would show the theory to be wrong. In a true science, the following statement can be easily made. If X happens, it would show demonstrably that theory Y is not true. We can then design an experiment, a physical one, or sometimes a simple thought experiment, to figure out if X actually does happen. It's the opposite of looking for verification. You must try to show the theory is incorrect, and if you fail to do so, thereby strengthening it. Pseudosciences cannot and do not do this. They are not strong enough to hold up. As an example, Popper discussed Freud's theories of the mind in relation to Alfred Adler's so-called individual psychology, which was popular at the time. And then his quote for this is as followed. You say, Newton was suppressed a lot in his earlier scientist days because of religion. Very sad. It's true. And it is sad because your religion shouldn't have anything to do with you. This stuff, in my opinion. I might illustrate this by two very different examples of human behavior. That of a man who pushes a child into the water with the intention of drowning it, and that of a man who sacrifices his life in an attempt to save the child. Sorry, trigger warning or something to that effect. I'm not good at trigger warnings, okay? I just research and read. Just always get ready to be triggered over here, I guess. Each of these two cases can be explained with equal ease in Freudian and in Adlerian terms. According to Freud, the first man suffered from repression, say of some component of his Oedipus complex, which is narcissism, if you don't know, while the second man had achieved sublimation. According to Adler, the first man suffered from feelings of inferiority, producing perhaps the need to prove to himself that he dared to commit some crime. And so did the second man, whose need was to prove to himself that he dared to rescue the child. I could not think of any human behavior which could not be interpreted in terms of either theory. It was precisely this fact, that they always fitted, that they were always confirmed, which in the eyes of their admirers constituted the strongest argument in favor of these theories. It began to dawn on me that this apparent strength was in fact their weakness. Popper contrasted these theories against relativity, which made specific verifiable predictions, giving the conditions under which the predictions could be shown false. It turned out that Einstein's predictions came to be true when tested, thus verifying the theory through attempts to falsify it. But the essential nature of the theory gave grounds under which it could have been wrong. To this day, physicists seek to figure out where relativity breaks down in order to come to a more fundamental understanding of physical reality. And while the theory may eventually be proven incomplete or a special case of a more general phenomenon, it has still made accurate, testable predictions that have led to practical breakthroughs. Thus, in Popper's words, science requires testability. If observation shows that the predicted effect is definitely absent, then the theory is simply refuted. This means a good theory must have an element of risk to it. It must be able to be proven wrong under stated conditions. From there, Popper laid out his essential conclusions, which are useful to any thinker trying to figure out if a theory they hold dear is something that can be put in the scientific realm. So then we have several of questions here. There's 7 of them. And I think that this is very important to go through. Hello, Iconic. Good to see you. Hope you're doing very well today. And this is why I say, like, a lot of times when I go in to talk about like a scam, I'm hoping that they prove me wrong, that it's not a scam. When I'm talking about pseudoscience, I often look for the proof of the science for it. Things like that, and if I'm talking about a science, I try to find proof that it's not true too. I believe in this shit. So, number 1 is it is easy to obtain confirmations or verifications for nearly every theory if we look for confirmations. In other words, this is all like, don't do confirmation bias, people, okay? Number 2, confirmations should count only if they are the result of risky predictions. That is to say, if unenlightened by the theory in question, we should have expected an event which was incompatible with the theory, an event which would have refuted the theory. Number 3, every good scientific theory is a prohibition. It forbids certain things to happen. The more a theory forbids, the better it is. Number 4, a theory which is not refutable by any conceivable event is non-scientific. Irrefutability is not a virtue of a theory, as people often think, but a vice. So that's an important one. Number 5, every genuine test of a theory is an attempt to falsify it or to refute it. See? That's what I'm saying. Testability is falsifiability, but there are degrees of testability. Some theories are more testable, more exposed to refutation than others. They take, as it were, greater risks. And that's another reason why I often talk about how we haven't come up with any testability for this. Like when I was talking about ghosts, and I said it's very hard because there is no way to test the falsifiability. Like we don't have a system in which we can test these theories out to prove or disprove it yet. So there is a possibility that it could be science in future, but as of right now, because there is no testability at all, it has to be under pseudoscience. Number 6, confirming evidence should not count except when it is the result of a genuine test of the theory. And this means that it can be presented as a serious but unsuccessful attempt to falsify the theory. I now speak in such cases of corroborating evidence and confirmation bias again. Number 7, some genuinely testable theories, when found to be false, are still upheld by their admirers. For example, by introducing ad hoc, some auxiliary assumption, or by reinterpreting the theory ad hoc in such a way that it escapes refutation. Such a procedure is always possible, but it rescues the theory from refutation only at the price of destroying or at least lowering its scientific status. I later described such a rescuing operation as a conventionalist twist or a conventionalist stratagem. One can sum up all this by saying that the criterion of the scientific status of a theory is its falsifiability or refutability or testability. I often talk about the testability. Finally, because I promise this is the end, Popper was careful to say that it is not possible to prove that Freudianism was not true, at least in part. But we can say that we simply don't know whether it's true because it does not make specific testable predictions. There's not a lot of ways to test psychology like that. It may have many kernels of truth in it, but we can't tell. The theory would have to be restated. This is the essential line of demarcation, as Popper called it, between science and pseudoscience. And most people still go by this to this day. That is what they base it on. Hello, Shaw. Good to see you. So they base it on Karl Popper and what he says. So can you test this? Can you go to disprove it and then instead you prove it further? These are the things that it goes by. So now that we've kind of talked about pseudoscience, we have talked about Karl Popper, we've talked about Michael Gordin, we have talked about Feynman. Hello? Okay, I'm back. Sorry. I don't know why my audio just dropped out, but it just fucking dropped out on me. So what I was trying to say at the end of that, I hope you guys got to the end. It seems like you did get to the end of the last article with me, in which we were talking about Karl Popper. No, my internet is not acting up again. For some reason, my headset was just pooping out on me for a moment. So, I found this 6-step infographic for ending pseudoscience. And I think that we've talked about all of the pseudoscience theories, if you will. So now it's just a good idea to kind of talk about this 6 simple steps, if you will. I find this all very interesting. But I do want to bring up how we did talk earlier about how we need to bridge the gap more and not really be out here all like, rah, 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 you're doing pseudoscience, stop it, and that kind of thing. So just keep that in mind, that there's a good way to do this. I'm just saying. So, it's a dirty little secret in the science community that most published scientific studies aren't 100% true. Mm-hmm. It's a dirty little secret. Bad girl. As Nobel Prize winning biologist Thomas Sudoff told this magazine, there are a host of problems with science journals. He summarizes those 5 problems as: hidden conflicts of interest between the journal and its reviewers, trivial accountability, measures for journalists and reviewers, expensive publishing costs and limited journals for authors to publish in, a murky hodgepodge peer review process, and experiments with unreproducible results. Which, again, that's the other thing, is that if they are being tested and experiments are being done, if the results are unreproducible, then we got to question it a little bit, right? Once these studies are published, they get into the media's unreliable little hands, some of whom are genuinely confused by the science, and others who are genuinely sensationalizing science for publicity gains. Is that what I'm doing? Donate to me and share this stream. Depending on the day and the news outlet. Oh, okay, then we're good here on YouTube. Coffee will either kill you or be the secret to eternal life. I guess if you get Organogold's mushroom coffee, depending, of course, through which orifice you administer it. Yep, because some people do put it in their... Anyway, owning a certain pet can make you infertile. Smelling farts can prevent cancer. I need to look into that one. Where did that come from? That one sounds fun. Eating chocolate can turn you into a Nobel Prize winner. I haven't heard that one, but there was a lady that lived to be past 100, and when they asked her how she stayed alive so long, she said she ate dark chocolate every day and did shots of whiskey. So apparently that will probably work for you more so than the other shit we've talked about today. Watching pornography could make men better weightlifters. Or in the case that we talk about here, apparently watching pornography is very bad and you should save up your semen for when you're with a woman. The list could and unfortunately does go on, as I have added to it. It's perhaps best said by John Oliver. We love John Oliver. He did an amazing anti-MLM episode on his show that I share quite often. I'm just saying, go watch it if you haven't yet. I'll stop that now. I'm very sorry again to all those people in the UK. I do love you. So he did an excellent report on sham science studies. In science, you don't just get to cherry pick the parts that justify what you were going to do anyway. That's religion. You're thinking of religion, he says. We like John Oliver here. He's funny. Much of the information gets dumbed down or selectively sensationalized as it passes from news source to news source. And some of it was dodgy from the start due to publicity-hungry scientists, which you can kind of understand but not entirely forgive, as their continued funding depends on finding things that are spectacular, even if a little fictional. Just a little bit. And yet it appears grant money is pissing down over Aston University in England, where a study concluded that toast falling off a table will tend to fall butter side down. That's what we were doing. It was very important. The important information was published in the European Journal of Physics. So don't drop your toast. The 5 problems set off described above are big. All of them need to be fixed. When they are, papers published in scientific journals would not only be more honest, they'd be more varied. More kinds of research would be published, smaller experiments, overlooked topics, and even experiments that had unfavorable or negative results, which that would be interesting too, to see them disproving things. All of those outcomes would make scientific papers more approachable to the general public. Let me know if you guys agree. It would also cut down on the amount of pseudoscience that attempts to explain the actual science and ends up confusing everyone. Again, let me know if you agree. Maybe the answer to this has a lot to do with how these journals are handled. So is there a way to fix those 5 problems? You bet! At least from the scientific end, the media is another kettle of fish. I try as anti-media over here on the tubes, okay? I'm trying my best. Share my stream so that we can do better. Sonoff offers 6 easy tips scientists can use to fix their publication problems and get the public interested in their work. 6 simple steps to fix science publishing. Number 1, upload papers to preprint servers. Simplify the publication process. Number 2, clarify review forms. Make feedback useful. Number 3, train reviewers and editors. Make feedback equal. That probably needs to be done a lot more, I'll admit. Number 4, reduce experiment complexity. Make results easier to reproduce. Now, that one I kind of have an issue with, because it's not that we should be making it easier to reproduce. It's just we should be doing maybe more experiments is the problem. I don't want to make results easier to reproduce, because then I feel like I'm rigging the science. Number 5, validate experiment methods. Avoid erroneous conclusions. Number 6 is publish all results. Show the big picture. And I do think that should be done where everything gets published. And that's it. You can fix this, science. So I think that I don't have to go into like what all of that means, because then they go on to like double explain it all, which I just think is redundant. We don't need to do all of that. But I will say that the whole thing about publishing the results, all of them, I do like. So then they go on to say, by taking these 6 steps, scientists would make their results clearer to the public. That would make discoveries easier to understand, help increase scientific curiosity, and cut down misinformation, which I mainly want to cut down the misinformation. That's what I would like to do. It would also force scientists to communicate in plain English, which would make a serious dent in the amount of pseudoscience we hear on a daily basis. Yeah, I mean, that could be true. Physicist and renowned skeptic Richard Feynman explained it to us this way: without using the new word which you have just learned, try to rephrase what you have just learned in your own language. Pseudoscience explanations are larded with jargon and often can't be explained in plain English. Without the jargon, the explanation falls apart at the seams. Actual science can and should do better. Plus, the sooner pseudoscience goes away, the happier and smarter we'll all be. The ball's in your court, scientists. Run with it. And again, the only thing that I feel like they missed the mark on, it is literally the butter side is heavier. That makes sense, right? Is the fact that we definitely do need to make the peer review journals and the scientific journals better, but I just don't know if making the information easier to obtain or easier to reproduce when doing the studies would actually help with the misinformation. I also want to bring up how we also read an article that kind of talked about how no matter what, pseudoscience is going to exist. I don't think that there is a way to completely stop all pseudoscience, as I've also stated many times during this. Honestly, you could argue that anything is pseudoscience that isn't proven by science, but is still in that scientific field, like the categories we went through. If it falls under one of those categories, maybe it's pseudoscience, but that does not mean that it will be there forever. There have been a lot of things that have gone from being pseudoscience turned into science. Again, there's been a lot of things that have been considered science that then get pushed into the pseudoscience category. But I do think that we all need to get together and figure out exactly how to distinguish what it is. I do like Karl Popper's and his testability method, because I do feel like that is one of the easiest ways to go about it. I also like the idea of having to prove it wrong in order to prove it right. That's something that I practice every day whenever I'm doing videos or whenever I'm doing deep dives like this. I go into it, I want to prove myself wrong. Like I said, I go into it and I say, near-death experiences, I don't believe in them, but there's a bunch of people out here that say they have them. So let's hear what they have to say. Let's look into the evidence that they have. Let's try to see if they provide me with information or real science that makes me change my mind. I am open to having my mind changed, as you have to be out here if you are on the interwebs. Know that you are not the know-all of everything, and that you will be changing your mind about a lot of things often out here. And I think even when it comes to your own philosophies and your own belief system, you have to be open to learning and growing as a person. So, like I said, I just think that if science provides proof there's an afterlife, I'm going to have to rethink my atheism, right? Things like that. You have to be open to that kind of thing, especially if you're kind of over here talking about these topics like I am. Because if you just go into it going, this is what pseudoscience is, and we just need to stop it right now and just, cut it out of everything, I don't think that's the right way to go about it, as they seem to be pretty interchangeable. So I thought that this would be a good stream to kind of put it out into the world that there are different categories of pseudoscience, talk more about Karl Popper, talk about some of the other theories in which people kind of distinguish between the two, and then just have a little bit of a discussion about it all. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your belief systems are. Let me know about some of the pseudosciences that you believe in. Hell, if you believe in something and you want to just have fun with me one day and you want us to do a stream about it where I do what I just said, where we go and we research it, we watch videos of people talking about doing it. I have a bunch of streams and videos like that on my channel, so you can go check it out. Let me know. Let me know. I will try to disprove that it is pseudoscience and find the science behind it, or vice versa, and we can deep dive it all live together just for fun. And I will not yell at you for believing in it. Again, I have people on my channel that believe and disbelieve in all different types of things, religions, spiritualities. Not everyone over here is an atheist, for example. I have mods that believe in God. It's just the way it is. I like to surround myself with people that have different belief systems because then I can learn from them and we can have real discussions. And it's more fun for me in life. I suggest that you all try to do the same. So going forward today, maybe just try to re-question a belief system you have. Just go look it up. Go, you know what? I've been believing in ghosts, and maybe if I can go and find out definitive proof that it's real, that will help me. Or maybe I should go and try to disprove ghosts are real and see if I can find the information. Or hell, do it with the Sasquatch. Do it with whatever. Even your religion or something if you want to. And just, try to think critically today. Try to think outside the box. That's all I ask. Just try to do that. And then again, let me know what you guys think, the difference between pseudoscience and sciences down below, because I do want to hear from you. And no matter where you are, what you're doing, I hope that you all have a fabulous, fabulous rest of your day. Again, we are going to be streaming at 6:10 p.m. Eastern. Thank you. Thank you. There's one example I'd like to expand on. Thorium reactors being held back from use. It could solve the energy crisis. That's interesting. Maybe we could look into what could solve the energy crisis. It could be some fun. So take care, everyone. Have a fabulous day. And again, 6:10 p.m. Eastern, I'm going to be streaming with the Recovering Hunbot. And it's going to be a stream where we're reacting to bullshit with On Passive. So have a fabulous, fabulous day. Mwah! Bye. See you later.